Hello and welcome to VOP Business on its premiere. I'm Esther Nwachukwu. As you know, the world of business is indeed a busy world, from commercial transactions in the popular market to the more sophisticated dealings in the stock market, and then, well, onto everything else on which the economy stands, from manufacturing to entertainment to telecommunications to foreign trade and investment, as well as transport and right up to oil and gas, especially in the case of Nigeria. On VOP Business, we aim to bring your voice to the table, where policymakers take important decisions and make sure that in the end, no one is left behind. We invite you to be part of VOP Business by liking and subscribing to our page and Voice of the People TV, as well as our social media handles at VOP TV Live. Now let's start off with the business content of the day. The Senate has approved the request of the President, Muhammadu Buhari, to restructure the 22.7 trillion naira loan from the Central Bank of Nigeria, extended to the federal government under its Ways and Means provision. Now, the Ways and Means provision allows the government to borrow from the Apex Bank if it needs short-term or emergency finance to fund delayed government expected cash receipts or fiscal deficits. Now, since the government started experiencing a significant shortfall in revenue, it has relied heavily on the central bank to finance its expenditure programs via Ways and Means, which balance as of December 19, 2022 stood at 22.7 trillion naira. The federal government had said it will repay the loan with securities such as treasury bills and bonds issuance. President Muhammadu Buhari had last year asked the Senate to approve his proposal to securitize the loan, but the Red Chamber rejected the request, citing a lack of details. President Buhari, while appealing to the Senate to reconsider its stand, said failure to grant the securitization approval will cost the government about 1.8 trillion naira in additional interest in 2023. Now, in order for us to understand what this means and the economic implication it would have, especially for the incoming administration and a couple of other business transactions as well in the local market, we have joining us virtually a Barrister Fred Nzako, who is also an economic expert. Barrister, welcome to VOP Business.
Thank you. Good to be with you.
All right, now, so you heard about the Ways and Means through which President Muhammadu Buhari has been able to get the approval of the Senate to sign on. It's about 22.7 trillion naira. Now, you do know that this current administration already has a debt stock of 46.7 trillion naira. In addition of this, what do you think what would you think the impact would be in a large scale?
Well, the impact will be so humongous, and most worrisome is that the impact will be more on the negative side, because it is very unbelievable that the outgoing government would make such a request. It's also very incredulous and unimaginable that the National Assembly will approve such a request at the twilight and the dying days of this current administration that is supposed to terminate on May 29th, 2023. Today is May 4th. We are looking at less than 25 days, about less than 25 days, so we're looking at roughly weeks. How can a government, after running for 8 years, make a request for such an amount of money, to 2.7 under Ways and Means procedure to raise a fund to finance budget? Which budget are we talking about? Is it the budget that is going to be implemented mainly by the new administration, or the one that the outgoing administration is yet to do? This is May, and we're in the second quarter of 2023. The new government will run through the second quarter and then run through the third and the fourth quarter. So we expected that even if there will be such a request or such approval, it has to be made by and in favor of the incoming administration and not by the outgoing. I can tell you that it leaves a shock to most policy observers that the government will think and reason in this regard. Meanwhile, the new administration that is coming may have different policy direction in tackling economic issues. So it must follow the exact policy of the current government, so that the current government will go and collect this loan and say they are keeping it for them to spend. Meanwhile, they have different policies, they are expected to have different directions, and they are expected to have different approaches. So I do not think that this is worth doing. I do not think that it is well thought out program, and I'm at a shock that the National Assembly will approve such money when the government has almost 3 weeks to extinguish.
Now,
and it must definitely extinguish. And the second worrisome aspect of it is that we already have huge debt burden, both domestic and foreign. So why add this debt again? Why add this to Nigeria debt? At the end of the day, it will increase our debt profile to almost 69 trillion naira. Almost 69 trillion naira. So the impact, it will have terrible impact on the value of the naira. It will have terrible impact on inflation. Already that is inflation is already at a soaring level. It also have very terrible impact on employment creation and generation. So I do not think this program should be implemented. And if it is possible for central bank not to release such funds to federal government, the outgoing federal government, that should be the wisest thing to do.
Now, Barrister Fredin Zako, the Senate leader, Ibrahim Gobir, said that a special committee was set up by the Red Chamber to scrutinize the fiscal document and put up a short report after critical analysis and review. Now, he stated that the House of Representatives earlier approved the additional 1 trillion naira Ways and Means advances requested by the president. And he said that part of the Ways and Means money was given to state governments as loans to augment budgetary shortfall in their various states. So apparently, in order to finance the budget, there are some aspects or some state governors who have not been able to cater for the financial needs in several ministries, departments, and agencies in their states, as well as some other areas that include salary payment to some public institutions. And so these particular Ways and Means, this money is what will be able to cushion the effect of that lack. And then the question is arising, how comes a few days to the expiration of your tenure is the Senate approving this? What personal interest do you think the Senate has, or has the money been shared in any way? Because it's given a daunting thought to a couple of economic experts like yourself and economic critics too, as to why this money is being signed off now, when of course there are other areas through which these Ways and Means would have been, properly infused to help stabilize the Nigerian economy.
Blackmail the people of Nigeria using the budget. Which budget are we talking about? Is it a budget that has 70% of recurrent and only 30% capital profile embedded in it? Is it the budget that a large chunk of it will be spent on servicing the over-bloated bureaucracy of government? And that is why, despite all the humongous amount of money borrowed by the government, you do not see the impact in the productivity of the economy. You don't see the impact in the growth of our GDP. You don't see the impact in unemployment profile. You don't see the impact in the standard of living of the people. What the government should do is to find ways and means of cutting down costs of governance. They cannot run away from it, and that is the most realistic thing to do. Cut down costs of governance, cut down the gluttonic type of government that we have, cut down these unnecessary wastages in government, and by so doing, save money to apply for other productive ventures. This idea of running to collect money in loans from foreign and local sources will never help Nigeria. At the end of the day, it keeps suppressing the economy, it keeps suppressing our productivity, and it keeps affecting the life of the people. This idea of borrowing can never be a positive economic approach, a positive policy approach to solving Nigeria's huge myriad economic problems. I do not support it in any way at all.
The Senate President Ahmed Lawan, after the approval of the fiscal document, he noted that the Ways and Means was a global practice. However, he faulted the process adopted by the executive arm of government, which failed to carry the National Assembly along while accumulating a huge amount of loan. So it's obvious that the National Assembly is already aware of the huge amount of loan this current administration has, yet it went ahead to approve 22.7 trillion naira as ways and means, according to what the Senate leader said, is to prevent the Nigerian economy from shutting down. In what way? Let's look at the taxes imposed. Let's look at foreign exchange. Let's look at taxes imposed on importation, excise duty, internal revenue placed on everything that is done as a business revenue in this country. In what way, if this money is not approved by the Senate, if this money is not eventually given, will it shut down the economy? Because that's the excuse they gave, that it was to help sustain the Nigerian economy, not to prevent a shutdown. However, the Senate again is also saying that the executive did not do well by not informing them in due time, considering the huge loans that they already have acquired.
I do not think that the economy will shut down simply because this big loan is not taken. There's no way economy will shut down. If the government want to keep the economy alive, government has the capacity to block all the leakages. The leakages are too much. Leakages, all the revenue sources that are leaking. In the oil industry, there are so much leakages, both at the upstream and at the downstream. At the exports and the excise duties, there are so many leakages. At oil point, at the various borders, there are leakages. And even in government offices, there are leakages. These are leakages that should be blocked. And it is not beyond the government to block all those leakages. The very moment these leakages are blocked, government will have enough funds to carry out its activities as government, both at the state and at national level, pending when we'll begin to implement some of the measures that the government has signed at the federal level that gives authority of quasi-restructuring to the states and the component entities of the government, whereby the states are getting to get involved in some of the productive ventures hitherto exclusively handled by the federal government.
Barrister, do you think
the first step to take is to grab the low-hanging fruit, block all the leakages, financial and economic leakages, and you'll see money to run the government. And it is not by taking loan that will always be frittered away, just as others have been frittered away. Until government does that, government cannot convince any Nigerian that it is doing well in its economy.
Do you think, due to this, that the National Assembly has failed Nigerians approving this loan? Do you think they failed Nigerians by doing that?
I strongly believe that National Assembly has not acted in the best interest of Nigerians by approving this loan request for the executive. They should tell us why they have done that, and I can tell you that they cannot even justify such approval, because at the end of the day, not only that, the effect of that will be more on the negative than on the positive. So National Assembly obviously has not done well by this approval. And even if they are going to do this approval, they should have waited to do this approval for the incoming government so that there will be sustainability, there will be feedback, there will be monitoring, there will be accountability from those who are supposed to implement whatever the policy is aiming at achieving. Not for the government that is fast going, and at the end of the day, the whole thing will be like a bazaar for the outgoing government, and Nigerians will continue to wallow in poverty and in deprivation.
All right, Barrister Fred Zako, thank you so much for your time with us on VOP Business. I do appreciate your input.
Many thanks.
Thank you. Now, still in VOP Business, the Managing Director of the International Monetary Fund, Kristalina Georgieva, has cautioned about the unforeseeable consequences that could be brought about by the retail central bank digital currencies. Georgieva expressed her concerns about retail CBDCs in a May 1 interview at the Milken Institute 2023 Global Conference. According to the IMF boss, the IMF considers retail CBDCs to have far more room for error than wholesale CBDCs. According to a report by Cointelegraph, retail CBDCs are state-backed virtual currencies issued by central banks for use by consumers and businesses, while wholesale CBDCs are similarly central bank issued but are designed to allow financial institutions to carry reserve deposits with the central bank. The IMF MD noted that the organization was collaborating with about 50 countries to ensure best practices are adopted, which she expects to have a huge influence on banks and economies in the future. The e-Naira introduction on October 25, 2021 made Nigeria one of the first countries in the world to develop a central bank digital currency that is available to the public. Africa's most populous nation joined the Bahamas and the Central Bank of the Eastern Caribbean on the coveted list. Now, millions of electricity consumers may be plunged into darkness in the coming weeks as the federal government, through the Transmission Company of Nigeria and the market operator, have begun a massive disconnection of debtor electricity distribution companies from the national grid. Findings show the development followed notices of disconnection from the grid served on some of the discos by the market operator. The MO, a division of the Transmission Company of Nigeria, had informed some discos, including generating companies, of the disconnection plan due to failure to make remittances of ancillary services bills. Since noticed by IMO, or rather the MO, it has been observed that electricity supply had degenerated further across the country, with many areas complaining of either low or no supply. The executive director, MO Eddie Edger, in a recent statement advised airing discos to make necessary payments. These followed an intervention by the Minister of Power, Abubakar Aliyu. Now, the Imo State government has cried out against the grounding of Owerri-bound flights at airports across the country, especially Lagos, by leaders of the Nigeria Labour Congress. Many passengers were left stranded at airports across the country due to the disruption of flights by the NLC officials. The Labour Union declared what they called no flight to Owerri action at the Murtala Mohammed Airport in Lagos, which has affected flights to and from Imo as well as other destinations. The action was in response to the violent disruption of Workers' Day celebrations in Imo State by suspected agents of the state government. The loss from this industrial action is estimated to be in the range of billions of naira. Meanwhile, the Minister of State, Budget and National Planning, Clem Agba, has disclosed that the federal government plans to include an allocation for geospatial data in the budgets of government agencies. He was represented by his special assistant, Dr. Zachary Lawal, during the sensitization workshop on the use of geospatial data for development planning and decision-making in Abuja on Tuesday. According to the minister, the federal government has made a provision for monitoring and evaluation of projects in the country, further noting that this will be replicated for geospatial information system. He said that the ministry recently secured the approval of the Federal Executive Council on its national M&E policy. He stated that they started with the Federal Ministry of Finance, Budgets and National Planning. And that's all we have for you right here on VOP Business. Remember, like I told you earlier, that you can subscribe to our YouTube channel. It is a Voice of the People TV. On our social media platforms, especially on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, it is VOP TV Live. Share, send in your comments, and of course, your recommendation on any topical issue in the world of business. My name is Esther Nwachukwu, and thank you for being with us.